Dawson Rider Mickey.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection, King Sphinx, and Pumpkin Wrapper figures from the new Monsters subline. That's essentially a new subline that are monster figures that are meant to be larger and a little bit more in scale, with the fact that the monsters often towered over the Rangers at least a little bit. As you know from my previous reviews, Monsters of the Week isn't my absolute favorite thing or priority, but I think this is a pretty cool idea. These ended up being cooler figures than I thought, and I think it's a nice way of them not taking up valuable mainline slots. But let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with King Sphinx and then go on to Pumpkin Wrapper. Okay, so starting off with King Sphinx, right off the bat, I think people are going to want to know about the scale. As I mentioned, these were sort of designed to be larger scale to fit in with the monsters often being a little bit larger than the Rangers. So here he is next to just a regular basic Lightning Collection Ranger figure, you know, mmpr black here, so you kind of get the idea for the scale for your average run-of-the-mill Ranger. And then also here for scale, we have Goldar, who is the only other, well, except for Zed, but some of the only other monster figures. And I've seen people complain about the fact that there is a little bit of a scaling issue with Goldar being shorter and stuff, but I don't ever recall Goldar being that big, maybe a little bit in between. But to me, it's not necessarily a huge deal. I'm not expecting it to be perfect. I know there's going to be some people that are really sticklers, like stickler me-seeks, for it being 100% perfect in scale. But for me, the idea that this is decently enough in scale, and I feel like this is decently enough in scale for me, is honestly fine, especially since they also released and started working on Goldar and Zed and the putties and stuff before these were even an option, and they're kind of meant to be a subline. So, you know, it's not a huge deal, and I think it's perfectly fine for me. I do think it would be cool, even though this scale right here is meant to be like this, if they later down the line they did Lightning Collection Megazords, and by that I don't mean the combinable ones, but I mean Megazord figures. I think that would be pretty cool to have like a Megazord figure of this size, and then you could have them like fighting each other. I think that would be pretty neat. But I figured I'd show that off to start. Now, as far as accessories-wise, he's got his main two accessories on him, which is his staff and his lightning effect part, and the only ones the other really have is these two hands here. One's a closed fist, and one is to make holding the staff easier, as right now I kind of have it in the sort of loosely open hand, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think these are pretty cool. The staff really looks Aladdin-y, or like he's the Riddler or something, and it's really basic. Like, it's basically just this kind of brighter blue and a little bit duller yellow. It looks really basic, but with it on there, with the effect part, it actually looks pretty badass, and I really dig it. I'm just going to move it out of the way, just so that we can talk about the figure a little bit more, but I do dig that a lot more than I thought I was going to. And you can see the effect part here just kind of fits over it. You kind of have to, or you kind of want to curly cue it around the question mark there, but you can sort of do it in your own way. But yeah, pretty much what you're used to, but I think it looks pretty. Now, as far as the figure itself, just to go over articulation, both of these guys do have the base level articulation you would expect from a Lightning Collection figure, with some little more hindrances. Like, you have the nice hinge joint here, but you are a little bit hindered by like his elbow piece here being stiff and then it clashing with this, and so you don't get as much in and out movement unless you really press it. You do get the elbow joint here and the swiveling here, and you get a nice leg joint here and the swiveling, and a double knee joint right here, and you have your ball joint here on the foot, so you get a nice range of motion there, and you have the classic chest and waist articulation, and you can move his head, and luckily this is a little bit soft, so you get some clearance there. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to move because of his size and because of some of the armor bits and whatnot. And then you have the wings here, which actually do detach, and they are detached when you first get them, but they separate here like this. I'm not going to do it right now, but they are on little hinges, so you can flap them like this if you want to. So that's neat. So basically what you'd expect from a figure art. I'm so used to saying that still, but from a Lightning Collection, but just a little bit hindered, like I said, because of the pieces, and in general, sometimes he's a little bit stiff. But now, setting that aside, I think the sculpt on this is pretty well done. I've seen some nitpicks about it by saying it doesn't look that good, but I personally think it looks pretty awesome. I think the sculpt details are really detailed. I think the color looks good. I'm really happy with it. Like, it's not 100% perfect, but it almost looks statue-esque, and I really dig it a lot. And like, the wings look really good with lots of feathery detail in them, and I'm really happy with it. You know, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. Like I said, I wasn't that excited about Monster of the Week figures, but this guy ended up being pretty badass looking, and I really dig it a ton. Like, if you like this guy, I think you'll be happy with it. I think it's a cool, unique release. Another Lightning Collection thing I didn't expect them to necessarily do in this form, or do so soon, that I think is pretty cool. And even though it's not perfect and there's some details missing and some slight offness, I think people can tend to be too harsh on what's honestly a pretty awesome looking figure, just at least for me. But now let's go ahead and move over to Pumpkin Wrapper. Alright, so now we have the fan favorite Pumpkin Wrapper. As you can see at the beginning, he's basically in scale with King Sphinx, but just, you know, for the same scale comparisons, just in case, you know, here he is next to Goldar, and then I have a very special one for his Ranger comparison, which is this one right here, because he includes 3 pumpkin heads that you can actually replace on any Lightning Collection Ranger figure for this, which I think is a really cool, fun, and creative bonus. Should have never played that joke on Aaron, but it'll rot off on its own in a couple of weeks, right? Into that, you get 2 others. You know, I got this one here, and then as you saw at the beginning, I had this one which you can intertangle with his lightning part. I really like the lightning parts on both of these. I mean, Sphinx's is pretty basic, and this one's not like anything crazy, but I like the twirly look of it. It looks like evil green Halloween force lightning on it, but I like that you can put the pumpkin in it as well. I think that's pretty cool. I think he's got the cooler accessories. And then on him, I basically just have what essentially looks like holding weapons hands, and then I have 1 closed fist, 1 open, and then you do have some bonus like weapons and like a noose, which is kind of disturbing. I think a decent amount of variety, which I really appreciate. Now I have 2 complaints about this guy. One is that he didn't come out at Halloween. Like, I think this dude's scheduled release date was, what, late December, early January, and he just recently started popping up early, but it was just shy of Halloween. Like, honestly, this would have been perfect because I always put out my pumpkin wrapper pop vinyl at Halloween, so I'm hoping to do that next year with this guy, but it was so close, it's like, dude, you could have gotten it for Halloween. So 0 out of 10, didn't come out at Halloween. But the other one is really with the head sculpt. Now, I think mostly they did a pretty good job on it. As you can see, it's pretty nicely detailed, and it's well sculpted, and you have like pretty good proportions. There's just something a little bit off, I think, about the mouth and the eyes, where, you know, if you look at the suit, it kind of depends on how you look at it, but I wish it had a little bit of a darker shade in here. Like, if you look at the art, it's black and more cartoony, and it's not quite like that in the show, but I wish maybe you see some of this sort of black, like, schmutz paint that they have here. Maybe have included more of that to give it a little bit more of an outline, as this is a little bit nitpicky, and this isn't something I would be like, don't buy this figure because of this, unlike some people, but I would say that I think it would make it look a little more defined, and it makes it look like it's a little bit unfinished right now. And I would say that's a little bit nitpicky, but that's really my only huge flaw with it. I guess one other tiny flaw is that this has a really nice organic dark looking orange, and then the rest looks a little bit carroty. That definitely looks a little bit strange. But again, for me, these are kind of nitpicks. There's stuff that, yeah, that kind of sucks and I wish it was changed, but for the most part, I still think this is a really cool figure. The articulation on this guy is the same as Sphinx and his other Lightning collections, and sort of the similar things apply as I talked about with Sphinx, of the joints being a little bit stiffer and you having some hindrance with stuff like this. And the only other difference is he can't really move his head up and down, and his head can be a little bit difficult, at least on mine, to turn. Like, I have to grip here and grip here, and at first I thought, oh, does this not move? But it does, but it's just a little bit more difficult on mine. And he can be a little bit top heavy, especially when you start putting the pumpkin on him. Like, when I was taking the picture for the thumbnail, I wanted to have him blasting it up, so I had both of them blasting up in the thumbnail, but he just wouldn't stand like that. So obviously you can just tell by looking at him that he's going to be a more top-heavy one. So yeah, only complaints is I wish this was a little bit darker, and I wish these matched a little bit more, because it looks like a pumpkin wearing a carrot, or vice versa. So that's about it for this one, guys. Overall, I really did like these more than I thought I would. They're not without their problems, as I've said, but I still think these are pretty freaking cool. Not to mention a pretty freaking cool idea, but pretty awesome looking figures. And there's not perfect scale stuff, but I really dig the idea. And as I mentioned before, this would be something really cool to do if we ever do Lightning Collection Megazord figures. So I definitely think if you're a fan of either one of these, I can recommend checking them out, even if they're not perfect for a lot of people. I think that they're pretty cool, especially since they won me over more than I thought they were going to. And again, my real only complaint is that Pumpkin Wrapper came out after Halloween. Like, come on, son. Anyways, guys, that's about it for this one. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get just for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.